Water Department. I would like to thank you all for coming. I wish there was more of you, but they'll see it on the channel. If you please rise and join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. One thing we just ask you is, if you have a question or would like to make a comment, please raise your hand and you'll be recognized. Now I'm going to turn the meeting over to Pete. You can take it from here, old boy.
Thank you, Jim. My name is Pete Kasperzik. I'm one of the 3 commissioners here in town on the Water Precinct. And I think it's important for you folks to understand that we're doing this public forum. Paul brought this idea forth so that we could inform you folks about your water system. It is not the town's water system. This is the Water Precinct of Sanbornville. You folks own the water system. It's your responsibility. We, in fact, work for you. I've invited a few guests along this evening to explain why we do some of the things we do, which direction we're trying to head in as far as getting grants and loans, and different procedures that we follow. Some of the guests that I have here this evening, well, first let me introduce the commissioners. This is Paul Morrill. This is Dean Giffen. We are the 3 commissioners. As Jim stated, he's the moderator. Dave is the pump house operator. Christine is the clerk. Laurel Morrill is our treasurer, or your treasurer. And that basically covers the offices that meet each month. And we invite you folks to come to our meetings. Our meetings are held right across the lights down here of 109 and Route 16. The second driveway on your left, I believe it would be. Might be the third because I think that one house has 2 driveways. Anyway, it's a little brick building down on the left hand, down in there, about 300 feet down and on your left. We meet once a month. We post the meetings on Facebook. We also post them at the bank, the post office, the town hall, and any other location we can find to put a piece of paper and hang it up. And as I said, these are meetings that the public is welcome. And I would hope that we see more of you folks at these meetings. So also we have Luis Ordorno, and he's with the State Revolving Funds Program, if I'm not mistaken, Assets Management.
Drinking Water and Groundwater Bureau, yeah.
Yeah, and Rick Skarenka, who is the head of that department. We have Ken Good, who works with Granite State Rural Waters. We have Alan Hascom, and he's with District 3, the State Department of Transportation. And I believe I've covered everybody. So, let me just explain a little bit how the 3 of us got in this chair. Last year, the Water Precinct was getting ready to dissolve. There was very little assistance, and Dave over here was the commissioner who was doing most of the work, and it just became overwhelming. And if you had to step in our shoes, you'd find out just how overwhelming it could be for one person when it's completely overwhelming for 3 of us. He did a great job of keeping the system going, but it was time where he was getting ready to turn it over to the town. Several of us got together, including Jim, Becky, and several others, and put together a committee to see if that was a good idea. We had concluded that it wasn't, so we decided we were going to try to keep that from happening. And careful what you wish for, I guess is the term, because we succeeded. We've been in these seats for about 8 months now. It's been very enlightening for me. Dean, on the other hand, has been with the system for over 30 years. Paul did 6 years prior to Dave getting on. Dave put in 25 years. Christine, how many years have you been clerk?
I'm not sure.
And Jim, how long have you been moderator?
At least 35 years.
Double digits.
Okay, this is my first year, so I'm the virgin to the precinct, and I'm getting quite an education to the system. We are dealing with a system that has got a lot of problems. It was put in 1938. We were left with a limited budget because, quite honestly, the precinct thought the town was going to inherit this and didn't want to put a lot of precinct money into it. So we've had to adjust the rates because, as most of you have noticed, there were some problems this summer. Dean's the expert on the system and where it's at and where it came from. But what I want to assure you is where we're trying to go. We are talking to different organizations like the state about grants and loans. There are certain things you have to do to qualify for these grants and loans. So the days of running the system like it was your neighbor's well isn't working. We have to run it like a business. And businesses have to be kind of stringent in how they bill, how they collect, and how they assess their rates. To be well, I won't even say be profitable because we're not a for-profit. We're just trying to keep our heads above water, pardon the pun. I would like to, as I started off saying, let you folks know there are 3 government bodies in this town. All 3 try to work together, but none of the other can tell the other what to do. There's your local government, which is your selectmen, your administrator, and the agencies within the town. The other one is the school. You have the school board and the administration, the SAU. We come in as 3rd as the water precinct. We have our own governing body. We have the members are all voters in the system. You all have a vote. We hold our annual meeting in April, and you're all welcome. And actually, we want you to come to this meeting and participate, because that's the only way we can do things. I would like to I know there's only a few people here, so we're trying to figure out what the best way to get the word out to you folks is. Is it through the internet? Is it through Facebook? Is it through Clearview Communications, Clearview Channel? Is it just hanging signs up at the post office? What is the best way to reach you folks? We're going to would you save that until afterwards? We're going to let all the speakers up here talk, and then you folks can ask questions. So keep that in mind, please, and let us know. As I said, there are several grants and loans out there. Each one of them has their own stipulations on how you may receive them. They just don't want to, people like Mr. Skarenka here, he's in charge of a lot of money. And he just can't hand it out to anybody who thinks they want it. They have to prove that they're worthy of it and that they're working to make sure that it's used properly. Mr. Good over here, he works for an organization that helps people find this money and works with them to achieve it. There's another organization we're working with, Kathy Rogers, with RCAP. She also is helping us with the grant and loan funding. This is going to be a long process, 3 to 5 years. I wouldn't think any less than 3 to 5 years before you start seeing some progress as far as getting the system started to be rebuilt. Gentleman from District 3, Alan Hanscom, excuse me. I asked him to come along this evening because a lot of you folks have concerns when you see us digging out in the road as to why we may not have done something or why we're doing something. He's the head of the state's DOT District 3 Division engineer. I'm going to ask him to address a little bit of that so you folks can understand. We just can't go out. The pavement plants are closed certain times of the year. So if we have a leak in the winter, we fix it. It might not be perfectly smooth because we need to wait till the hot top plants are open. I'm going to shut up now and sit down and let Dean give a little bit of the history and what he also to try and explain to you folks, like when you see the water go off in the summertime and it comes back on, it may be discolored or something. He's going to explain the process of what we have to go through to shut the water off, turn it on, and do the repairs. So Dean, if I may.
Excuse me, but I'm not going to stand up. I'll speak into this thing instead. System, as Peter said, was put in 37. It was put in with tar paper and tar-covered steel tubing lined. When they put it in with chains, which broke the tar paper surface. So immediately from that day forward, the rust started working its way through the pipe. The original system was the village here, and it's all that type of pipe, along with a water tank on top of the hill and well number 1. That was the system. After that, before my time, the next thing that happened was well 1 got polluted. Well number 2 was put in over in Brookfield, which is where our pump house is today. Then after that, or about that same time, Forest Hills, Randall Drive, all of these developments, except for Pinewood Crossing, were put in. Those were all laid with ductile pipe. And since then, we did put in Pinewood. I was involved in that. That was done with ductile. So what we're having with the leak problems is all of the original steel tubing, mainly, that has rusted and has gone through. When we have a leak developed, we don't know what it is until we dig a hole and get down in there and see whether it's a split, a leak, just a leak. And when we're there, we have to stop it. We can't leave the road open for 2 or 3 days and get parts and replace. We have to fix it and close it. So you put a band around it that's rubber lined and seals it. You look around the pipe, you may see rough spots all over the place, but how long are you going to spend knocking every one off and putting a band on it? You'd be there for a week. So basically you close it up. Now you've disturbed it. Chances are one of those rough spots, a tubercle, will let go and that'll be a leak. Now you're back in the same hole. It may be 3 feet away, it may be 6 inches away. But that's why we're in there more than once, quite often. Then the next thing is when we fill it with coal patch, basically. And once it settles, when we have enough that we can get a truckload of asphalt, so that's 2 or 3 leaks at a time, then we'll repave and get a good surface back. But you can't bring up enough for one patch and have it ever stay warm. So that's why we're back in the same hole so often. Now, as far as the system itself is concerned, the ductile pipe is pretty good, depending upon how it was laid. We had one on Mountain View here a couple of weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, that let go. We get down in there, and that was ductile pipe, good stuff. Broke off completely. We get down in there, we found out why. It was laid right over the top of the ledge with nothing under it. We had to go upstream or up the hill, dig out some more to get enough clearance between the pipe and the ledge to get the clamp in to slide down. Now, when you do that and the ground settles, the pipe takes a strain over that ledge. We've had a few in Forest Hills that same way. Either when they filled it, maybe they had a rock against one piece of it, it was pushing sideways, eventually it would snap. Or it went over something, it would snap. So we've had a few of those, but those are few and far between.
We had one right out here.
We had one, yep, same thing. And again, it's just strain on the pipe. But for the most part, that's good. So for the system itself now, the tank was rehabbed about 5 to 6 years ago. That's in great shape. We did that. Well 3 was drilled after I was here, but at the same time, once that was done, when Branch River came in, we had well 2 rehabbed. So we've been in decent shape until recently. And now we're at the point where the wells are yielding less water than they should. And basically what it is the veins that come into it plug up with the fines. So we wanted to get 3 surged this fall. which would put it back in online at full velocity or full flow again. The water is so high, we can't do it. The water is so high in the swamp right now that by the time we take the fill off around it to get down to it, we'll be working in the river. So that we've had to put off until spring when the water level drops. We also need to do it to well 2, but we've got to do them one at a time so we can keep operating the system. So that's where we stand. Our next projects right now are to complete wells 2 and 3 for the rehab. We just laid 130 feet of pipe in 109, and right now we're talking, we haven't put it in concrete yet. We would like to lay another bad section, which is from the end of the system down at the bottom of the hill that I live on, up through to Bill Denley's. That section, particularly in front of Peter's place, is terrible. Again, it's the same thing. You'll find a leak, you fix it. The last time we went in, we had to loosen up a patch that was on there, been there for a couple of years, slide it enough to get one in between 2 others. The thing is, when we find that, we can't just throw pipe in. We've got to open up a stretch and put in a decent amount of pipe. Otherwise, you end up using so many fittings to fit one length of pipe, you'd go crazy. So that's where we stand, and that's what we have for a system.
Okay. I'd like to turn it over to Dave Tibbetts, who does the pump house operations. And some of you folks had some concerns about chemicals we add to the system. And I'm going to have Dave explain what he does when he's down there for the system. He's also the one who you'll see driving on his little gray truck that reads your meters on the side of your building. And Dave, if you could also touch on the fact that maybe having people keep stuff clear of the meter section. So I'll turn it over to Dave.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Dave Tibbetts. We take water samples once a month. We do it for bacteria and water quality. I take it at my house and the Paul School. That's every month. If we had a hit, we had a hit on the Paul School last month, or this month. And what we have to do, we have to resample that one, and within 5 connections beyond it and 5 connections before it, to retest those as soon as possible as we found out the hit. We did that, and they were all clean. So we done, but not, I don't know what happened. Sometimes a bottle bad or something goes wrong, and you do once in a while. Not very often, but it does happen on occasion. We add soda ash for corrosion control, to control the copper pipes, the corrosion on the copper pipes, and the lead solder in the old houses. Oh, that'll leach out and all. But we sample for that. I think we're every 3 years now, and because we've had good samples on them in the past, so that there's no problem with lead. It's not, the lead's not in our system. We have no lead in our system at all. If there's any lead found, it's in the houses, probably the old houses for the old lead copper, the old lead solder, and it will leach out. But we've been good for that for the last 2 or 3 years, I think 2 years. So we add chlorine, a minimum amount. We add 1.4 milligrams per million, I think it is. That's our rate. Usually they go to a 2.2 milligrams, or 2 milligrams, but we don't go that high. We're just doing it basically on a maintenance type to make sure that we're getting good water. And generally we've had good decent with that there. And I do read the water meters twice a year. I did run across one person had a storage shed in front of the touchpad, so I could not read the touchpad. So if you please keep stuff away from the touchpads. Most of them are in good locations. Once in a while they'll find one that's not a good location that gets hidden away. I think that's about it.
Can I touch on a couple of things on that?
Yes, Paul would like to talk a little bit to this.
Yeah, I'd like to add a little bit to what David says. David goes down there daily, every day, goes down and reads several readings, along with checking the chemicals. We have automatic feed pumps. But some of the things that he checks, we have meters to tell the runtime for how long the pumps are running. That information is used so that we can determine whether we might have a leak. If things are running at about an hour and a half or 2 hour runs, and then all of a sudden we see the pumps are running at 4 hours, that means we're probably pumping something in the ground, and we start looking around. We also keep track of the level of the tank. There's a meter that reads the tank level. That tank level keeps the head pressure on the system so that it's constant. We pump at about 92 pounds per square inch on that, and that tank keeps that constant. It is also used for fire protection. The water precinct has numerous, and I can't tell you how many, fire hydrants scattered
About
around
50.
the system.
About 50.
About 50, Dave says. And they are used for your fire protection. You probably will see when you renew insurance, they'll ask you how close the fire hydrant is to your home. You get a better rate if that's the case. So that tank also keeps us in a situation where we can draw from that system if there's a house fire in town. Also, down there, we read both wells, and I guess that's about it down at the pump house.
I think there's one, we do add soda ash as well.
Yeah,
He
that-
did say that.
Yep.
That's what I said earlier.
I did, okay, I'm sorry, Dave, I didn't hear you on this side.
And chlorine.
And that soda ash is to try and keep a neutral pH, about a 7 on the pH
7.5.
scale, so that it's not too acidic or too sweet. So that's kind of the purpose of what that's all about.
Okay, from here, we're gonna let Paul keep going. He's got a few things he would like to hit on as well.
Yeah, just to dovetail to the fire, the value that you see from your water is hard sometimes for people to, it's easy to forget about how valuable it is to you. But if you stop and think about all of the things that you need water for, or if you have your water shut off for about an hour, typically our phones start ringing and people start panicking. And I understand why, because it's happened to me as well. But that also we use fire protection, the sprinkler system in this building, sprinkler system at the school, the firehouse down at the public safety building, elderly housing. Those are all sprinkled, and they're all running off of our system. So that's fire protection and life safety issues. But the value of the water, I guess, is the thing that I find most interesting, because as long as you turn your tap on and there's nice clean water there, everything is all well and good. Well, we raised our rates up, as you probably well know, $25 per 6 months on the base rate, and went up to $10 per 1,000 on your per gallon cost. This was so that we could do some of these rehabs, so we can replace some mains. And those things, hopefully, once we get some of these things done, they will in turn reduce our electricity costs and some of those things. So once we get these things done, what's that? Chemical costs, all of those things should start to change. So once we get the thing in good shape, we should be able to see a decrease, hopefully, at some point. Now, as Peter said, we've got a lot of plans, long-range plans, so I'm not going to promise anything at this point, but at this point, it's 42 cents a day for you to be hooked up to the system, okay? If you take your $75 and divide that by about 182 days, that gives you about 42 cents or 41 point some odd cents a day. So that's what it costs you for that. And then it costs you $10 per 1,000. So that comes out to about a penny a gallon. Now, I don't know what you get for that down at the market, but I'm sure it's a lot more than a penny. And that's the value of the water. And then when you start thinking about baths and showers and brushing teeth and cooking and washing and fire, all of the different things that you do, we find that to be a pretty darn good value. The other issue is payments. We send out our billing every 6 months. We've talked to some experts, and some places do it quarterly, so that it's not such a big hit on people. We've kind of toyed with a few of these things, but if we do it quarterly, then our costs go up. They double, because we have to send somebody out to read them, and then we have to print them and send them out. So we're staying with that, but we want to cycle so that your bill comes out in the 1st of November, and then probably around April. We were trying to get it staggered from tax bills and Christmas, things of that nature. So that's the reason you saw it in November, not in December like in past times. The situation that I'd like people to hear is, do not ignore your water bill. If you cannot pay your water bill for whatever reason, you need to contact Christine at the water precinct, make an appointment to come in and talk with her, explain the situation, and find a solution to it, be it a monthly payment, see if there's any resources out there for assistance or whatever the case may be. But if you ignore it, what happens is, once we pass our deadline, we're forced to, we send out a certified letter. That puts another $10 onto your bill. If you don't respond to the certified letter, and then we come out to shut the water off, that adds another $100 to your bill. There's $50 to turn it off and $50 to turn it back on. Reason being, we have to send people out to do this business, and it's not fair to the people that are paying the bills to be not being charged, having these fees charged. So please, whatever you do, don't ignore the bill. If you can't pay it for whatever reason, talk to us. Please don't wait till you get your certified letter, because all bets are off once you get the certified letter. So we just wanted to talk a little bit about that. Income survey, we are talking, and Pete alluded to the fact that we're looking for grant monies, and one of the things that is required is an income survey of the village district, the Sanbornville water precinct. We have that for the town, but we don't have it for the district, for the village district. It's always a very sticky and touchy subject when we ask people, okay, write down on a piece of paper and let us know, what do you make? Well, first off, we aren't going to know that information. That information doesn't come from us. We have a third party that takes care of that. That stuff is sent to that third party. It's tabulated. It's not tied to you. It's not sent to the IRS. It's not sent to the state of New Hampshire. But what it does is it generates a picture to see what the residents of the village district can afford. And if we are above that threshold, then we stand a much better chance of getting grant money and also loans, so that we can do some of this work. So there may be something coming along to do with income surveys. Please give us a call if you get it. We're probably, I'm not sure exactly, Kathy, who couldn't be here tonight, she is from RCAP, is the one that's kind of spearheading that. So I guess that's what I wanted to say about that.
Well, I was just going to say, we have an email address of sanwatdep@gmail.com. I hope that you all take time to write that down, use it, and send us any concerns or questions you have. And if somebody comes knocking at your door and asks for this income survey, and you're uncomfortable, you could give one of us a call, send us an email, and we'll verify that, yes, it is somebody we're expecting in the neighborhood conducting this survey. And as Paul said, you know, I believe most of the grant and loan agencies, Paul had alluded to a minute ago that if people paying for the water might not like it, if people who aren't paying aren't subject to any processes that are costing the paying customers money. Well, I think with the grant and loan funding, it's the same way. They want to see that communities that need the help, that are in most need of the help, are getting the best value. And the only way they can do that is through an income survey. Nobody's trying to pry into anybody's personal business, but at the same time, with our rate increase that we just experienced, that will actually, in the long run, help us at getting more grant funding, because the median income, the ratio between the two, should help to put us in a better qualifying position. So even though if you think we're doing you a favor by keeping your rates down, we may not be doing you a favor because we're not going to be able to upgrade the system. We're trying to position ourselves in a way that is acceptable to these agencies that hand out the money. And they do hand it out cautiously, as any trustee of any funds is supposed to do. With that, I would like to turn it over to...
I just want to add.
Oh, sure, go ahead.
Along those lines, one of the things that's been keeping those rates down is basic volunteers. Dean has been doing it for a long time, Dave as well, Jimbo, Peter and I, not so much, but we've had our hands in it as well. And we have been running it and not, we're not keeping, we're not getting paid. I guess that's the easiest way to say it. And so, you know, it wasn't uncommon this summer for Dean and I. Peter's working, but Peter throws in more than his share of time as well. But we could be out there 20, 30 hours a week, running around, checking leaks, working with the contractors, running over to Concord to get patches because we need a patch. We didn't have the one because we're so slim on our budget. So there was a lot of activity going on this summer, and we were kind of carrying a lot of that expense. One of the things the state and the experts are telling us is, you guys shouldn't be doing this. You're a commission. You make you make your policies. You set rates. You do all of that administrative stuff, and you hire an outfit to do this. You have somebody come in and do what Dave does. If we have a leak, that individual would take and set up the contractors. They would be on site working with the contractors, making sure it's done. That wouldn't be us. Part of the problem with that is you're looking at about could be any, last year we put $30,000 in, but it's probably closer to 60 or 70, Ken, would you say?
That's correct.
Probably $60,000 or $70,000 a year just for that operator to be on site doing what it is that we're doing. So we've been kind of doing a lot of that work, and it's being frowned upon by a lot of the experts. However, we didn't think it was at this time prudent for us to go out and hire a $60,000 or $70,000 operator and step back. We will be working in that direction. Peter mentioned that it's got to be run like a business, and that's going to be part of that transition. Something else Dave said about your touch pads on the outside of your home. The touch pads and the meters are your responsibility to maintain. If something is wrong with them, let us know. If you have your house sided and the carpenters come along and rip that off the side of the house and throw it in the trash bin, you will be charged for that. Let us know. We'd be happy to take it off the wall, or they can take it off and reattach it. Same thing if you do renovations inside your home and somebody has to replace a meter. We need to know about it. It's safety of the water system for all residents, not just the individual homeowner. Plus, there are certain regulations that we have in place that require certain types of plumbing not be prior to the meter. So that's one other thing. Also, conserving water. If you see, you know, you folks are out there in the neighborhoods, if you see something that looks like a water leak, let us know. Dean and I, years ago, looked all over town, drove every road. We knew there was a leak because we were sawing on the pumps. What it was there was a broken line, and guess what? It was pouring right into the lake. Of course, nobody saw it. But here we finally came upon it. I think it was a 2-inch line, and off it went right into the lake. So we're pumping all that water in the ground. So if you're out there and you see something, call us. If it's late, and you don't know who to call the police department. They will contact us. That's probably your best emergency number. Otherwise, do as Peter said, go on to our website if you have any concerns there. But it's your water system. We're just trying to manage it. So if we work together, we can probably accomplish some good things, and water is going to be your next gold.
I did want to clarify one thing. The maintenance of the meters is not your problem. The maintenance is our problem. But we do expect that you keep it in good condition, that you don't pile things in front of the reader, that you don't break the meter if possible, and let us know. We will replace the meter at no charge to you folks to replace it, providing there's no additional plumbing that needs to be done. If it's a simple connection, connect and unconnect, that's us. And I would just like to go back to this summer where we had a problem with air in the lines. We chased that down for weeks, looking for it. And the tough part about that situation was the air in the lines was actually creating breaks in the line. So every time we'd fix a spot, an air pocket would get into some place and blow another hole. We could not find that. We finally had called a pump specialist in, and Paul and Dean were at the pump house, and he tried an experiment which happened to work with us by closing the gate valve down a little bit at a time, which helped lower the amount. Dean, maybe you can explain it better than I can.
Well, basically, we were attempting to exceed what the well would yield at that time. And again, this is back to where the yield has dropped off. So you can only pump down to the water level, and you start throwing some air in with the water. And that's what was going on. So what we did was we throttled it down to the point that we're keeping water over the pickup in the well. So the air has disappeared, but all we did was work to get the air out. We haven't fixed the problem, which is the low yield, which is what we want to address this spring.
Yeah, well, it was pumping, when we throttled it down, we pumped it down to, throttled it down to what, about 84 gallons per minute?
Yeah.
And that well probably could yield what?
Closer to 200.
Closer to 200. So it's obvious to us that needs to be rehabbed, and what they do is they come in and actually put equipment down in it, and it blows those veins out, cleans them out. Once that's all cleaned out, then we have to go through a process of sanitation. We have to chlorinate it and run tests on that well before we can put it back online. So that takes about a week. So we're hoping that this spring, when we can get this well expert back, we can get that taken care of and get that one up to a higher yield, and then we'll be able to rehab pump 2, or well number 2, and get that one back up yielding what it should be yielding. And then we can kind of regulate them a little bit so we're not drawing past our water table. Fortunately, we've gotten a lot of water this fall, I guess. So that's helping our situation, but long-term, we need to get that fixed. So that's a big project.
Okay, I would like to turn the floor over to Rick Skarenka. He's from the state groundwater and drinking supply. I probably got the title wrong on that, Rick. I apologize.
Okay, Peter.
Go ahead, Rick.
I'll use the microphone just wow, that was a lot of information that you heard to date, and as a layperson, I think it's probably difficult to absorb it all, but I know, whether it's good or bad, I kind of know everything they were talking about because I've been involved in the system here for a while now. I think there's a couple comments I just want to make, and the first of all is that, from our state's responsibilities, we want to ensure that there's safe, clean water being delivered to the public. And I received complaints during this past year about air in the water and cloudy water. And, the first thing we did was I said, called up commissioners and I said, you know what, we need to take some bacteria samples out here. And we did come out here, and I visited several people's houses. So, the assurance that I got was that the water was safe to drink, and that was air in the water. And typically it dissolved or went away once you let the water glass sit. So I was pretty much assured that was the issue. I think the important thing that the message you can convey to the commissioners going forward is, what's your expected level of service to be provided? And what I'm saying that is the level of service I describe is so you're expecting to leave tonight, get out and get in your car, and your car will start, and then you can go home. Well, you go home, you expect that you turn on the water, and the water will be delivered to your house. So there's a level of service that you expect to be delivered there. And that level of service, it is different for each water system. And I think the message you can convey to your commissioners is, what kind of level of service do you expect? And the result, once you convey that message, then that translates directly into what they should be doing for operation and ultimately the cost of the water. I tell the story all the time, as I live in Concord, New Hampshire, and I'm on municipal water. And if I'm out of water once a year, I think to myself, well, that's not bad, as long as it's not during Christmas holiday, when you're having family over and a special event. But then if I change that to, what if I was out of water once a month? Is that acceptable? And the answer changes to no for me. So you think somewhere in between there's an acceptable level of service. Our goal, and it should be the goal of commissioners, to provide water, clean, safe water, 365 days of the year, every single minute of the day. And if that's the bar, then, and the level of service that's expected, then the commissioners should be then taking steps to make sure they can provide that level of service. So that's I'm not defining, for the town or for the district, service to be provided. There is a minimum level of service that should be provided, and that's where I was last year at this point in time, coming to the select board and saying, we're getting very close to this point of level of service that is not meeting even the state's concerns. So, but since that time, I will. The current commissioners have stepped in. They're educating themselves and trying to educate the public. It is a slow process, and it's something that we at the state are working with the commissioners. We happen to both provide, the technical advice or support, but also the financial component too. We have loans and grants that we offer, but the way, and I think this has been conveyed earlier, is that you have to figure out where you're going before you take the first step. And before you apply for a grant, before you apply for a loan, you need to figure out what do we need to do. And tonight you've heard, we've heard water main replacement, some meters, you get a storage tank. So I've heard the wells needs to be rehabbed, which is a major concern of ours, but it has to be done. What's the first priority? By doing the planning, and this is what Luis's program is engaged with, is that will help set the path forward. And if I had $1 million in my trunk of my car tonight, ready to hand over, I'm not sure I would get the same answer of where to spend the money from each of the commissioners. And that's what the planning documents, these planning going forward, will help the decision makers and also convey to the public why were they in fact are doing something first, or what's the order of priority. So I think that's the first thing they should be do here is come up with a asset, we call it asset management planning. Basically, it's identifying what you have, figuring out what condition it's in, and then establishing a priority of what's the first thing you really need to do.
And to follow up on that, I would just like to assure folks that what we are doing is we have put out an RFQ recently for an engineering firm to come, that we can look at hiring as part of this planning process to help us put together a plan for the system. We had 2 applicants, and I'm happy to say that one of them is here this evening to answer any questions that, you know, if there's any about. But we are in the process of trying to find an engineering firm. We are going to apply for a grant to help us with that engineering firm. That's part of the process. And as a matter of fact, while Luis was here doing nothing, I handed him the application. And we are in that process. We are listening to the state. We are listening to those who know more than we do about all of this stuff. And there's plenty of those people. We're getting a lot of information. But the first step we were told to do was look at an engineering firm. And we have taken that first step. We will be interviewing both engineering firms in the very near future, along with our assistants from RCAP, Kathy Rogers. So that is being done, that's in the process. And now I'd like to hand that over to an appropriate time for Luis here, who's head of that program.
So yeah, Rick talked a little bit about the level of service and what's expected and how should it be addressed and whatnot. And one of the things that I think was not mentioned directly, but indirectly, when you talk about level of service and when you start asking for, as customers, for you to provide a level of service that's way up here, guess what? There's a cost associated with that, right? So that's why they had to do what they did with the rates in order to start stepping up their game and providing a better level of service, but they need help and monetary wise, right? Budgeting wise. So that's why they had increased their rates. It is, unfortunately, it takes not just once, not twice. Sometimes it takes more than that to really realize how much work needs to be done and how much it's going to cost to actually get that in place. So I'm thrilled to see that they have provided me with this application for the asset management grant, because that's a first step in this process. I think before you go ahead and start putting money into different assets into your infrastructure, you need to realize what's the most critical components and where to spend your money. So this grant and the asset management program is going to provide them that. It's going to provide them guidance to make sure that they're taking your water rates, making them work for the infrastructure, and making improvements going forward. So I think it was Peter that said it earlier. It's going to be a long process. You know, just the grant process, I would say it takes about a year to do it correctly and to come up with the outputs that defines the road work ahead of them. And then after that, it's slow moving and actually designing and constructing whatever needs to be done. So I ask for you guys to be patient with them. They have been trying their best, and I could say, because I've been in communication with most of them, they've been at most of our workshops lately to find out more information, educate themselves. I'm thrilled to see that they're trying to educate the public. At DES, that's one of the things that we always encourage and recommend is communication and education to the public, being transparent with the public. So I appreciate that. And any other questions, I'll be willing to answer them.
Okay, I'm going to go over to Ken Good now from Granite State Rural Waters and the role that he's going to play. He can explain a little bit. And I would just like to say that Granite State Rural Waters and RCAP are very similar organizations. They're both working for grants and helping small communities, small water systems. We found that RCAP seems to have a better program in seeking grants and loans and filling out the applications for that. Whereas Granite State Rural Waters, with technicians like Mr. Good, are better at the infrastructure of the system and managing it. So we're trying to incorporate both of these organizations to help us out and put together the plan as Rick had suggested that we need, along with an engineering firm. So, Ken, I'd give you the floor.
That's right. My area of expertise is basically water distribution and water treatment. And I work as a consultant for Granite State Rural Water. We're basically a nonprofit, and we do not charge for our services. We work with small water systems. The larger water systems, they have the budget to hire consultants, but the small rural water systems usually are challenged in that area. And this is one of the services that we offer. I was basically called in because Sanbornville was having multiple water breaks. And usually when that happens, it's due to air in the system. And what normally happens is when air gets into your piping system, it doesn't mix well with the water, so it usually stays in a pocket. And as that water is flowing through the water mains, it has a tendency to compress that air till the air pressure goes through the roof and ruptures the pipe at that point. So the question is how is the air getting into your piping system? Normally, when you have air in the lines, it's usually due to a water break where they had to drain the water main, and then when they turned the line back on, they didn't effectively get all the air out. If that's not the case, then it's usually somewhere at the source. And when they called in a well specialist, they found that when the well was kicking on, the pump in the well was kicking on, that it was actually dewatering the well and starting to suck air. Another thing I'd like to mention is a water system this size requires licensed operators. Your water commissioners are not licensed. And I'm told that Dean at one time was, but he's not at this time. And it is a requirement that for day-to-day operations should be performed by a licensed water distribution and water treatment operator. So that's something that you're going to have to consider, is hiring a licensed water operator or a company that provides that service. And there is a number of companies out there that do provide that service, and I've actually given a list to the commission.
Okay. Mr. Hanscom, can I get you to talk a little bit about the right-of-ways? Because as you know, the state didn't build their roads on top of our right-of-way. We installed our pipes within their right-of-way. So they have certain expectations of us, and we are trying to work with the state and local level to make sure that when we are planning a project, that maybe it coincides with one that they're doing so that we're not disrupting their projects as well. So, Alan?
Sure. Last but not least. Can I ask two questions of you? I know how many hydrants do you have. How many customers do you have, roughly?
About 500, give or take?
About 410, 400.
410.
How many linear feet of system do you have?
What's that?
How many linear feet of water main?
About 7 miles.
7 miles. I was just curious. I had a couple blanks.
Okay.
So we're not sitting on opposite ends from DES for a reason, but our priorities are different, but safety is in mind for all of us. You're interested and concerned with having a safe water system and good water. Our customers are driving on the highways, and they expect to see safe highways, they expect to see safe work zones, they expect to see the same type of treatment in town here as they might run into any place else in the state or in the country. So there's the level of expectation for everybody. We understand that it's a small water system. We have quite a few of them throughout the district and the state, and we work, especially our local folks work pretty close with the system operators and trying to help you guys through some tough spots now and then. But like the commissioners donating at time, my budget isn't expected to donate into your repairs. But we need to coexist in the same area out there, and we need to work together. That we don't do something that you're going to undo, or vice versa. So, there's an expectation that of how the work is going to proceed. I said earlier, the work zones are safe for everybody. When the trenches are backfilled, that they're done properly, so you don't end up with a large amount of settlement, which is going to catch car tires and oil pans and other stuff, or cause crashes or damage to vehicles. We do expect that it gets put back together the same way that it came apart. When you install a water service to a house, the yard gets put back together, and we have the same expectation of the highway system.
Are there restrictions on when we can work in the roadways?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
I want you to,
Yep.
that's one of the things that I think people don't understand.
Barring emergencies, we generally run from about April 15th to November 1st for kind of open season for trenches. Although it sounds like we've had a fair number of breaks in the summertime, but winter is often water main season, and we understand that, and we still do expect to have a safe patch, all winter long. We're not going to have gravel and mud for the winter. Vehicles have to drive across it. We have to plow across it, and it becomes very expensive for everybody when wing drops down into a trench and we rip it off the truck or we drive over it. It's expensive for the truck, and sometimes it's expensive for the driver. So any planned work would have to be obviously during the summertime and from April through October. So you just can't work year-round.
And a lot of times it's beneficial if the water precinct coordinates with the state and the local highway department, because especially if like the local department is doing an upgrade of a certain section of road, maybe a half a mile or a mile of road, and if they are getting some grant funding or some funding of some sort, we may be able to piggyback along with them and reduce the cost of installation of that area of piping. So it's to everybody's benefit if we work together. And that's what we are trying to do. I know for a fact that within 24 hours of us receiving any correspondence call or anything, we have tried to respond to the users in the system, one way or another. We have tried to be responsive. We're trying to be open. We're trying to help you folks understand your water system. And with that, what I'd like to do is turn it over to Jim, and maybe, Jim, you could entertain questions from the audience.
So you've heard everybody up here talk enough. If you folks have any questions, please raise your hand, and we're Go ahead.
So, I guess I have a question. So, I live in the district.
Sing.
So, I lived in the district for 17 years. I had no idea that this was a co-op type water system. The first I heard of this was about maybe a month ago. So, I think I was corresponding with you on Facebook, maybe?
Maybe.
And so, anyway, my suggestion would be when someone has to put their name on a water bill because they've moved into the district, that you send them a letter and you say, this is how our water district was run. Because if I had known that this was how it was run 17 years ago, then maybe my husband would have been able to show up at some meetings or have a little more knowledge or participation. But again, we had no idea how it was run. We just paid our bill. We came from a bigger town, so our water bill came and paid our bill. Why go to a water meeting? It's a town thing. And then about 5 years ago, I realized it was not a town thing. And I thought, oh, this is a private company. Anyway, so this communication is massive. And then I do have issues with the raising of the rates, but I will tell you that I don't have issue with raising of the rates from here forward. Right? I get it. The water system is a mess. I live right up the street from you or right down the street from you. So
Yes, that's right.
Old districts that probably needs to be completely replaced. My issue is no communication. If the rates had to go up, you should have notified before we consumed that water. And I think also in that Facebook discussion, I realized that we were under water conservation this summer. I never received notice of that. I had no idea. I was watering my lawn, filling the swimming pool. No clue. But we were under water restriction. We shouldn't have been doing that. So raising the rates from here forward, I have no issue with. I do have issue with asking you to raise it, pay a different rate of something that I've already consumed. So if you can address that piece of it.
I'll be glad to address that if I may, Jim.
Yeah, go ahead.
First, if you want to look at the minutes of our meetings, we have discussed rate increases at almost every single meeting. We cannot, as is evident here, I posted in every business in town almost, posted at the post office, the bank, the town hall, put it on Clearview Communications, Facebook, 3 different pages, and when we have 10 people, we cannot force people out of their house. We cannot force people to read our notifications. We cannot force you to come to our meetings, but we have talked about it at almost every single meeting. As a matter of fact, we were going to raise rates, the billing before this one, but there was a little confusion with everything that was going on with the water system. We got kind of sideways on it. We missed it. We're not in a financial situation where we have the luxury of sending out a notification every time, because if we want to send out a notification via mail, you're talking $300 to $500 per mailing. Figure it out, 400 and some odd users, pay the stamps, the envelopes, pay a person or two to sit there and put them together and get them out. We just can't do it. We're putting notifications everywhere we can. We meet every Wednesday, or not every Wednesday, excuse me. We meet once a month, usually on a Wednesday. The second one, I believe, is what we try for. Post those meetings well in advance. What else can we do?
Well, I mean, I would say that less than 10% of your customers, or 90% of your customers probably have no idea that this is a co-op type system.
But it's their responsibility to educate themselves to some extent.
I understand that, but I think most people, I mean, unless you're born and raised here, most people move in and they just pay their water bill and they assume it's like everywhere else. And I understand it's ignorance on my part. I'm not saying, you've got to chase everybody down. But what I'm suggesting is that, somehow notify everyone that this is exactly, tell the history. I mean, I appreciate the history. I am glad to hear how it's patched and, how it started and what parts are bad and what parts aren't. But I'm saying, and like I said, less than 30 days ago, I didn't even know that this was how the system was run. So why would I come to me? You see what I'm saying? So I'm not trying to make excuses. What I'm trying to say is, I think we need to educate all 410 of these residents that this is how the system's run.
And this is what we're doing.
Jim? Yeah?
And I appreciate that. Oh, I very, very much.
And this is
Very
what-
much appreciate that. And I get that there's hardly anyone here, and I would say that's because most people don't know how it's run.
You want to speak to that, Paul?
Yeah, I would. First off, I appreciate your comments, and I appreciate the comment about changing the rates after you've consumed the product. It's a very good point, and it's one that I'm going to personally look into. I don't know how other districts do it, whether that's because we had so many other irons in the fire that it just got away from us. But I think that's a good point. So we're going to look into that. The other thing is, communications has been absolutely horrendous. There's no doubt about it. We know it, and it was one of the very first things that we did when we took over was talked with Christine and said to her that we need to check the messages at least once a day. And every message that comes in needs to get a response back by the end of the day. So you could be waiting 24 hours. It doesn't always happen. Something comes up in Christine's life and things go on, but the fact of the matter is we strive for that, because I personally find it one of the most frustrating things is if you have to deal with an organization and you call them and you leave them a message and they don't call you back. You kind of, okay, where do I go now? So trust me, we understand that. That's why communications is a big part of it. We're going to start, we want to do postings, but social media, Pete's been working on that to try and get that out there. Hopefully this cable TV meeting for tonight, even though people aren't here, hopefully they'll tune in and listen to some of this. And you're right, everybody comes in and they still call it town water. Talk to somebody and say, yeah, I'm on town water. Well, that's not actually accurate. And so we're going to work on those things. And that's one of the things that's what precipitated this, is because we kept talking. And I says, listen, we need to have a forum where we can hopefully get the place packed, tell everybody what the system is, and say, listen, it's your system. Help us fix it, and let's get on track and keep good, safe, reasonably priced water. And everybody in the community, we're all on the water system. So, you know, we all stand to benefit from working together. And trust me, your point is well made. And again, I don't know, I have to talk to maybe maybe Kathy. I don't know, she'd be the one to, I'm not sure how we plan to raise rates in advance. Is that something typical done? Rick, are you familiar with that?
Well, well, I'll let Luis, you want to talk?
Or Luis, one of you?
Well, you know, there's different ways to handle that, the rate structures and raising of the rates. Normally, typically, what I've seen in the past is where communities put out the information and talk about how they're going to be raising, how much they're going to be raising, and send it 1 or 2 bills ahead of time, telling people this is what's going to be happening. And then you start charging after the fact, right? You give them an opportunity to understand and kind of decide for, as a customer, how you're going to handle that raise. Are you going to conserve, or are you just going to continue to use, and then your bill is going to be whatever it is? So that's one way to handle it. The way they handled it, you know, I've seen it. It's not a common thing, because you'll get questions such as yours. It's a little bit unfair, but at the same time, they have been talking about this needs to be done. And where they're, you know, so it could have been better communications via letting you guys know, sure.
Yeah, another point to make is that if you heard, they bill twice a year. So there's kind of a conundrum there. Is well, if they waited till the next billing cycle, or you know, or 10, then we're not even. We know we're short revenue now, so now we got to start collecting more revenue now. Okay, not wait till the next billing cycle and then start it then. Some communities bill every quarter. So, you know, again, it's depending on the size. Some bills, some people bill monthly, and that brings in revenue more frequently. The other thing that does is that lets you know whether you get a leak or not. Because if you go 6 months and you get a leak, that's a fair amount of water that you could be wasting and not knowing. And that's not the commission's responsibility, but that's another thing is, you know, billing more frequently would do. And maybe that will be something they talk about in the future when they get automated with things. But the problem is, I see that every 6 months billing, that they have to act now.
But that goes back to the level of service and what is expected and what you're willing to pay for as a customer, right? Peter mentioned it, going into quarterly billing does increase the amount of the budget because of stamps and mailing and personnel. But if that's what you guys would like to see, then it could be put into the budget. Right. But to me, quarterly billing is the way to go. It gives you an opportunity to, as Rick mentioned, understand your bill more as to what's happening, your consumption, and perhaps minimize the impact of if there was something going on inside your house. But it, again, is community specific, and it's what they've been trying to do is reach out to the community and get that input from the community.
There's a utility, Paul mentioned about how frequently someone answers the messages. There is a utility in New England that their goal is to, within 2 hours, call someone back of them making the call into the utility. And you say, wow, that's pretty impressive, right? But that's also a cost to that. And someone has to be available, someone has to make the call back who's knowledgeable too. So, you know, so that's kind of, again, the level of service, we're pushing that, you know, that's what you really need to convey to these commissioners.
And this is one of the reasons why we're trying to do a little bit of the Facebook thing, because that comes up instantly on my phone, the others as well. We can see it, we can respond. I mean, you know, I shouldn't say this on camera, but even at my job, if I happen to look over, I can respond instantly and know that somebody at least knows that there's somebody out there that knows what's going on.
Let's see if there's any other questions from the audience.
Mine is not so much a question, it's kind of a little bit of history of what happened to me. Living here in Wakefield, I've lived here 9 years. About 5 years ago, I put an addition on my house, had a lot of work done. I repainted my house, and I tore the wire out of the touchpad. Is that what you call it?
Right.
I called and said that happened, and no one responded to that. Some time went by, my water bill, was paying my water bill. I had questions about my water bill. So I called pretty much every year for my initial complaint that my water touchpad had been disconnected. And I was given information about it was based on estimates and meter readings. And I know for a fact that the meter wasn't able to be read because the wire was not connected. I just received a water bill at $600. It's normally about $200. So I'm kind of concerned about that cost. Now, I discovered recently that I have a leak in my hot water heater. But I don't know how long that's been leaking. Really. It's a gravel basement, runs out the ground. Who knows? My water touchpad meter has just been reconnected over the course of this last billing cycle. So I don't know, I guess, if my water touchpad meter had been reconnected when I asked for it to be reconnected, maybe I would have seen that I had a problem at my house. before it got to the point that it's now $400 more than it normally is. I understand other people have issues and concerns about the rates increasing, but I called 5 years ago to have that fixed, and it wasn't repaired. When my water bill, when I received my water bill, it said, it's $600, and it's normally about $200, something's not right. And I don't know if it had something to do with that touchpad being disconnected or not. I called 5 days ago for a response about my water bill being out of control. I got a call back today. It's 5 days. You guys talking about return calls within a day, having work done right away. That's not been my experience.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. I'm not, go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, and that is unacceptable, and there may have been a reason. I don't know if it's this Thanksgiving, people being away. I'm not going to make an excuse. Our policy is that we want to return calls within 24 hours. We also now have gotten our website up to date, and we're hoping that people will use that as well, so that because we look at that at our homes, we don't have to. Part of our problem, again, is money. We were going to get a cell phone for Christine, so wherever Christine is, because we can't afford to have a full-time clerk sit down at the pump house and just wait for somebody to call. So our solution to that was, well, let's get her a cell phone, and that way she can carry it with her, and if customers call that cell phone, then there'll be a live person on the other end and can respond to it. But when we started looking at our budget, trying to figure out where we're going to go this year, again, as Peter said at the very beginning, we've been doing this 8 months, and last year's budget cycle didn't go according to our plans. That was one of the $500 or $600 or $700, $800 that we thought we better not do, and we made it so that we were going to answer that answer machine every day. Now, again, like I said, there are times when that doesn't happen. I will tell you that I can give you another example of how it does work. It was 6:15 in the morning. I got a call from the Wakefield Police. I happened to be in Wilmington, Delaware, taking care of my granddaughters, and they had a leak. And within 10 minutes, we had somebody at their house. So we do try to respond. Your case, what we should do is set you up an appointment to come in and see us so we can specifically look at our records, look at your case individually to see what the situation is and see if we can't come to some resolution to it. But we don't have your information with us tonight. And you're right. 5 years ago, they should have come out and reconnected that.
I can tell you too that I don't know if it was maybe a year ago or so, I spoke to Dave, I believe it was, and told him that I had all the history that I just explained. And he said, well, that's my job to fix that. And it still wasn't repaired for quite a long time. It's been a year.
One of the things that when we put together the water committee to look at doing what we're doing right here, I was kind of insistent. I don't, what happened to you this past week or whatever is unacceptable, and I'll agree. But I also don't want to look back at the past and point fingers or anything else. That's not why I'm here. I want to look in a positive direction. I want to move forward, and that's what we are trying to do. Do we make mistakes once in a while? Absolutely. We're all human. Are we going to try to correct that mistake? Absolutely. But I made it a point when we started this thing not to look back, not to point fingers, not to say who did what wrong, who did what right. Learn from our history and move forward. And that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah. Can you make sure that Christine gets your name and address? So, okay, well, I'm just asking you, please, so that we don't, so we can follow up on this, because that's what we want to do. We want to follow up on it. It'll just take you a second to make sure, and maybe Christine, do you know who the fellow is?
I believe so, but.
I called from him today, so that is Mark.
Yes, I do apologize with the holiday, I didn't get back to you, but I've also been here sick, so I wanted to review with the account, which is what I got on the message. I didn't ignore the call, I had the message.
So we will get to the bottom of it.
Yeah, we will try to remedy that situation, and as I said, if you want to show up to our next meeting, or
Guys,
schedule one.
we've gone around this enough.
Yep, thank you, Jim.
Any other questions?
I'd like to just say something. I just want to say thank you to all of you guys. I'm hopefully going to be moving my family into the Sanborn house here in, maybe in the spring. We're, caught in financing right now, but I came here to learn what was going on. So, taking the initiative, my wife saw it on Facebook. She goes, oh, maybe you should go try to see what this is all about and so forth, because the natural impression, I grew up in Manchester, but I've been living here for 22 years up in, Edward Drive, and we've had a well, and I'm looking forward to $400 a year, because if you want to replace wells every 7 years like I do, it's pretty expensive. $3,500 a head. But I just want to say thank you to all of you guys, the time that you put in, the effort you put in to even put this together. It's awesome. You see the future, you're looking towards the future, and I'm looking forward to being part of this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to make, I want to make a comment at the end.
Go ahead.
All right, thank you very much. You know what, I just, want to make, it's pretty obvious, I think, and if you look at everyone up here, except for Luis, look at what the average age is, all right? It's not, to be blunt, including myself, that's the sad reality of not just here, but every town across the state. So, last year, I was ready to, I was in front of the selectmen, said, this thing is going to collapse because no one is stepping forward. So I think my message is that, if there's other people who are willing to step forward, and perhaps younger, or get engaged, this is something that is going to be needed in the future. And so that, these gentlemen here aren't going to be there forever. And the last comment to make too is that, they should not be out digging a trench at midnight. None of these people, all right? That's the bottom line. I'm not going to come out here, but that's the cost of doing business is someone else is going to be doing that work, and you're going to have to pay for that. In the last 35, 40 years, that has not happened. So unfortunately, the town has to, the district now has to come to reality is that it's no more a free ride. And, if the full cost was charged, the rates probably would have been doubled at this point in time. But unfortunately now it's going to have to catch up, and going forward, there is going to be a certified operator has to be attending, and I've conveyed this to the commissioners, and they should no longer be out there doing daily routine stuff. That's not what they're there for. The other ones should be decision makers and managing people. So if there's someone else who wants to get, not involved with the commission, great. If someone wants to become a certified operator, we have training at our office that you become certified and as a great career, but I'm not encouraging that. But more importantly is, if there's other people who want to get engaged, now is a great time.
Second that.
Yeah, I think, that, we'd like to thank you folks for coming out. We appreciate your input. And, go ahead.
About a year ago, I wanted a car building on Summer Street. And is there any way I could get the history of the building there? Because my water bill seems pretty high.
Yes, what you need to do is contact Christine and set up an appointment or come to one of our meetings, and we can get that information for you. We don't have it with us now. I'm sorry?
I just started hearing about the meetings now.
Okay. Yeah, and that's, we're hearing that all around. Everybody's just hearing about the Sanbornville Water Precinct. Let me give you a little secret. If we went down there and hit that switch on the pump right now, we'd have about 400 calls on our phones. Everybody knows that there's water. When we hear from them, it's when there is no water. You don't miss your water till your well runs dry. So please come down and see us. make an appointment, and we'll be happy to try and straighten it out. Mr. Mason, same with you, sir. And we offer that up to any other ratepayer.
And remember, the annual meeting is in April. And we always have a poor turnout. I mean, there's always more of us at the table than there are you in the seats.
This May, that was the biggest one we've had in a long time. We had 24 people.
I know you guys have been collecting email addresses for a while, and I'm wondering if that's just a better way to communicate with everyone in the district? Because if you send me an
Peter
email,
thinks so, I don't.
get it. And then maybe you can send the history out to everybody via email so they know that how the system is run. And then I just wanted to add one more thing. I had no issue with 6-month billing. The only issue I had with this bill was that I take from every paycheck, $23, and I put it aside so that when that bill every 6 months or whatever comes, I can pay it. And so not knowing that the rate changed,
Threw that off.
in a deficit.
Yep.
Now I need to figure out, and I did pay my bill already, but I didn't pay the new rate, just, I'll be honest. I wrote a little note on there, and if I need to pay that rate some other time, I will, but I don't have, like I said, I take exactly, and I budget forward, and I know a lot of people live paycheck to paycheck, so they do the same thing.
And as we said, we appreciate the concern, and also, if there is a special arrangements to be made, you can always call Christine and make those arrangements. You know, if it's $10 a month to catch up on it, whatever, whatever it takes, we're not gonna argue that as long as we're seeing something come in. Because we need it to run the system.
Dana, do you have a comment or a question?
Yeah, mine's a little bit different, kind of a bigger picture, but obviously we're in the process of, trying to find a solution and figure out a process and everything. Looking down the line, and maybe some of the DOT, but because of, it's a little bit frustrating, we got everything got nicely new paved, and with all the water issues that we're taking it up left and right, and obviously gonna be doing a lot more of that, so more long-term, any ideas on, all this paving that we've done, it's gonna get all torn up and everything, what's gonna be the process as far as that goes? I feel like a lot of people.
Well, you're right, and that happens with the town as well. That's what when we get with the architects and we get a big total picture. Again, this system is 37, and when it first started off, it was basically for fire protection, and it just ran downhill. They had a pump, it ran downhill, everybody paid the same rate. No big, no big whoop, about 85 or so. They wanted to put sewer into town. Regulation says you must meter your water in order for them to be able to charge for the sewer, proper amount for the sewer. So that's when the metering came into play. And prior to that, bills were just kind of, they, like Jimbo said, there'd be 5 people sitting at a table, they come up with a budget. Everything was working pretty good because it was fairly new, so it was easy peasy. Things have started to disintegrate, some of the pipes, the steel pipes, the wells need to be rehabbed. A lot of these things are happening, so it's moving quickly, and if we don't catch it, like Rick said, he was meeting with the selectmen because he didn't think we were gonna, somebody would step up. Dave did a tremendous job as one person, but he couldn't be fixing the touchpads and running the bills and doing this and that, and he was just, it was collapsing on top of him. He did a wonderful job as far as he could go, but the system just needs to have more attention. So we know that. We do that with the town. We plan if they're going to be on a street, but sometimes water leaks do pop up underneath brand new pavement, and trust me, we don't like it either.
Yeah, no, I understand, I know it's a mess, obviously, that's what we're trying to figure out, but it was just, it seemed like, of course, stuff happened, whatever, but I have to figure out this fresh pavement down, and then there's 15 spots that have been dug.
You know what's great is everybody should become a commissioner, because I'll tell you, when I turn on the faucet at my house, it's a whole different experience when you're a commissioner and you see the water trickle out as it was when I was at the other end just calling and complaining about it.
Nobody cares.
What I would like to do is, before we all leave, is say thank you to our support staff of the state, the other agencies, and everybody who is helping us to build a better system here in Wakefield, or let me correct that, Sanbornville. All right? And my thanks to everybody for their help and for coming here this evening to help educate our users. And that includes John here from Horizons, who is one of the engineers I spoke about earlier, that we're looking into talking with him and exploring more about seeing about designing a system here. So, thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.